Hi, everyone. Carmen Disco here from Launch Network. We are broadcasting live from UIA TV. We got another great segment of the UIA Education Series. I want to bring on my co-host, Mr. Warren Tuttle. What's happening, Warren?
Hey, Carmine, everything's good. It's April 1st, and it's looks like it might start snowing this afternoon up here in New York. So, but other than that, good.
Really? Holy smokes. It's crazy, dude.
Yeah, we someday we're coming to Florida. Someday.
For all, for all you listeners out there who are listening to this after the broadcast, it's not only opening day baseball, but April Fool's Day, right? You watching the games, Warren?
Oh yeah, Yankees run. Yankees, we'll see.
Awesome. Hey, listen, Warren, before we introduce our guests, this is going to be such a great show. What's happening with the book, man? Things killing it out there.
Yeah, it launched last week. It's really exciting. Number one new launch in product development design. Have 12 5-star reviews already in the first week, and it's really great. So thanks to everybody for the support, and it's a good read. It'll be fun. So hope people take a look at it. Inventor Confidential.
Very cool, man. Really great. I've gone through it a couple of times. Awesome. You hit every piece with it. It's awesome.
No sacred cows. I give everybody something to do.
All right, cool, man. Well, it's up to you now. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited today to have David Petite on. David's an old friend. David used to be on the UIA board a few years back. And so without further ado, hey, welcome, David, to the UIA show. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Warren. It's really great to be here, and it's great to share this platform with you.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate you getting a haircut and, looking good. You're looking awesome. And it's good to reconnect. I know you're in Georgia, right? Is the weather nice?
Actually, it's like April Fool's Day for us. It's typically spring this time of the year, but it's actually cold. I think we got some of your weather here. It's not snowing, but I hope we don't have an April Fool where it does. So you never know. I've seen it snow in Georgia in April. So
it's a nice part of the world, and I know you enjoy it down there. So, but David, I want to go back and go back into your background, but I don't know if you remember when we first met. Do you remember when we first met? It's not a trick question, but it was at the USPTO.
That was a long time ago. Geez. It had to be 10 or so years ago.
Yeah, 10 or 12 years ago, probably longer. And we met down in the lobby of the USPTO, and I was going up to speak to John Calvert. I was going to hammer him for some money for the UIA. And you asked me if you could join in the meeting. And I said, sure, why not? Come on along. And when we got up there, you started talking about all your stuff. And I think he ended up helping you. And I said, well, I got to get to know this guy and get him on the UIA board. But just to give everybody background, David's Native American, has done so many things to help in the IP world there. And we talked about it that day. So hopefully we can get a little bit of your background and how you got to where you are today.
I appreciate that. No, I do remember that. And I can't thank you enough for letting us both double hit against John. I think we both got our way in a lot of ways with John. Back in the day, John was very helpful for, and I know he's still active with you, but John was, I got to tell you, I give that guy accolades because he was really pushing for the small independent inventor.
Yeah.
John's been a big fan of the small.
Yeah, that's his area. And Kathy Kierick, do you remember Kathy? I don't know, Kathy worked for him. She's actually still with us at the UIA, does our trade shows. But you had such a compelling story. You were so good at. I learned a lot of lessons just watching you work that room that day. So it was a lot of fun. And tell everybody just for a minute before we get started here. You also have a card, a USPTO. One of the baseball cards, right? That features you.
Yeah, I was actually honored by the USPTO. A lot of the folks, they called me up one day and asked me, they said they'd done a lot of research on Native American inventors, and they said, you kind of stick out because you have more inventions than anybody we can find. And
wow.
And they actually said they would like to honor me by putting me on one of their trading cards there at the museum, at the USPTO museum. And I was there not long ago when, I was there at the PTO office, I don't know, a couple of years ago, and they told me, he said, You know, out of all the trading cards down in the museum said, we have to restack yours all the time. The kids come by and grab yours all the time. It's something to do with the Native American thing they grab. And I said, that has to be it. You know, it has to be the Native American thing.
Well, it's a cool card. Yeah, it's really an honor to be in there, you know, in that pack. So
yeah, well, it was kind of a little upsetting because I was I was one person behind Edison, so it made me a little upset.
well, let's bring people up to speed because you have such a fascinating background, and I know you had you know, an engineering background. You developed a number of patents, which you sold to some large companies. But maybe even before that, you could tell us how'd you get into engineering, and as you were growing up, is this something that you had interest in? And just give us a little bit of your story.
Well, you know, I was always fascinated with. I kind of grew up in a house of engineering because my father, he was in the Navy for 33 years, and he was a sonar guy. You know, he worked on wireless communications. And as a kid, I'd sit on his knees and watch him tear the old Zenith apart, you know, to pull the tubes out, replace the tubes, and explain how it worked. And so from that point on, it kind of got into my blood since it was in his blood. And then I went on to school and learned a little bit enough about engineering to get dangerous. And so I always aspired to have my own company and to create my own vision and create things that I believe that would help, you know, in making people's lives better. And so, you know, I launched my first company back in 1992, a long time ago, and it was set up as an R&D wireless research company. And back then, that was before the internet really took off. And you know, at the time, you know, I was playing with the internet, and I also realized, you know, how, you know, the internet could play in telecommunications because everybody was looking at, you know, the internet back then. It was more looked at as a hobby kind of a platform, and usually trading information for hobbyists. But I realized it could do something that was very powerful. It could actually be used as a derived channel to move data without having a dedicated phone line. I don't know if you remember the old days where you had a pot, where you had a plain old telephone line that had to be dedicated. Yeah. Well, I realized that, you know.
By the way, I was just telling someone the story the other day when I was in high school, and we're the same age. Yeah. The computer filled up the whole room. And I remember the first time we were like in the building next door, and we had something come over the phone line, and it printed out. And all those. Remember those days?
Yeah, I do. And, you know, what I saw was we could actually get away from the dedicated phone line, the pot. So I realized, hey, this could be very powerful. And so then I started thinking of ways that it could be utilized to monitor, to use where people could watch and control data. So I started way back and looking at how I could move different applications utilizing the internet, and primarily connecting it with a wireless tether. So I could, you know, a virtual wire, so I could actually start moving data. So, such as monitoring building controls and monitoring lighting conditions. And there were so many applications out there where it was calling for dedicated phones and dedicated systems. I knew that this could be an alternative. So we started working on that platform, and we created, you know, we realized that as time went on, we realized that some of the technology we created was truly disruptive in a lot of ways, because we had to prove in moving certain data and utilizing the internet as a derived channel, we had to prove wirelessly that we could move it as a dedicated, you know, platform where it would essentially hit the 4 nines, where you would have the high reliability. And we had to go through UL and all the different, you know, different burglary and fire control systems. And we had to prove that we could actually move data utilizing the internet. And I knew I was on to something very exciting when I flew up to Chicago and met with UL. And I sat down with them and I said, this is what I'm building, and I'm going to use the internet as a distribution channel to move the data. And they all looked at me in that boardroom, and they were scratching their heads, and they were going, we knew this was going to happen, but we didn't think it was going to happen this quick.
Wow, that's cool.
And I knew then I was on the front of the cusp then. And,
yeah, you were right at the cutting edge of the whole wave, right? You know?
Yeah, and then they told me, so well, now if you want us to go ahead and give you a UL certification on this, you get to be the guy that writes the spec for it. So we also need 2 different university professors to endorse what your spec is. Oh. So I knew then that we were on something very exciting. So we came back and we helped I got 2 guys who help us write the spec. And I went back to the UL and I said, here's the spec. Now I'm going to file patents on this. And they said, wait a minute. Guess what? You can't file patents on this. If you want us to give you the UL spec, it has to be a standard. It'll be a new standard.
Wow.
So essentially, they told me I had to write spec, give them the spec, and good luck with it, because we're going to use that as a spec, and we'll stamp your product.
And without getting too deep into UL, I know how they work. They're private enterprise too, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So
that must have been scary, right?
It was. And I knew, though, that we were on something very exciting. I knew then. I said, okay, we got something very different and very, very good. So I started filing patents around what we were developing, not actually on the spec, but around what we were developing. And so ended up over the years, we created a list of what works and what didn't work. And I always told people, what I found to be the most valuable is things that didn't work. And, and that's what made us, I guess, ahead of the curve, because as time went on, we created a lot of technology. It got a lot of recognition in the utility space and the smart metering, smart grid technology. We were utilizing it then. And then we moved it into the home applications for home controls, for Wi-Fi thermostats, for Bluetooth thermostats and Zigbee thermostats. So we were in a very hot area. And then one day I get a phone call, just to make things simple, from General Electric, and said, we'd like to buy you out.
Wow.
And they said,
was that Jack Welch?
Oh, yeah. Well, no, at the time it was, what was the other gentleman that came in after Welch?
Yeah, right. He lives in my town. Actually.
Yeah. He basically, they come in and said, we are an inventor organization and we respect the inventor rights. And I do respect that about GE.
Yep.
And they said, we would like to just go ahead. We know we've looked at all your patents and you have about 50 and we've tried to get around them. We're just going to respect you. And
that's cool. They have I know they have an open innovation arm of the company, or they did. I don't know.
And I do respect GE for that. They're a very good organization in those terms. So I ended up, before I ended up selling to GE, what kind of helped push that along, I backstep here one step or two. We actually had sued several companies for infringing on my patents. Mm-hmm. So I've been in the courtrooms. I understand what it takes. I've been, all the way to, from anywhere from filing, a patent infringement case, all the way, almost all the way to trial. So I've been to certain phases of from designing something from the kitchen table,
right,
to creating a product from a napkin, and then turning around and then, capturing that into intellectual property and patents, and turning around and suing people that the idea.
So you obviously made the choice to go the patent route back when UL put the gun to your head, or? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I tell you what made me do that one day. I was, as a researcher, little guy in the garage, and believe me, I was in a garage. I realized one day I was reading the front cover of the Wall Street Journal, and this was way back, and I saw there was this inventor, little guy in New York area. His name was Gerald Lemelson. It was on the front cover of the Wall Street Journal, and he was an inventor, and he essentially was threatening to shut down Ford or General Motors, their production line, because of over barcoding patents he owned.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And essentially in the front of the Wall Street Journal, he was explaining, how he come up with his inventions, and they were infringing. And so I thought it was fascinating that this one guy with 8 employees had the ability to shut down General Motors production plant with a patent. And that showed me the power of intellectual property. So then I said, well, I need to follow what he did and follow patents. So luckily, after reading about him, I was able to actually speak with Mr. Lemelson.
Oh, cool.
And he was, I got to tell you about him. He was a very nice man. And like any inventor, if you told him you were an inventor, inventors have this tendency where they'll help other inventors. He would stop in his tracks and offer me help, assistance, or ideas. He just loved to talk about inventions. And so he actually gave me a sort of a roadmap to what to be careful on when you invent.
Okay. Wow.
And how to look at your technology and how to create ways that not only protect it, but ways that gives you future options to utilize your invention. So
now you've referred a number of times as we, and appreciate that. Did you have a whole team with you, or you had a small company?
You can do a lot on your own, but you got to understand when you start taking things from a napkin and actually going to productization, you got to build a team around you to create that. Yeah. And so there is an education, there's a learning curve for everybody in that process. Yeah. So yeah, I take a lot of credit, but I had a team around me, and we actually created and actually took different levels of different types of processes so that we could create the products that we needed to take to the market.
Well, that's pretty cool. So how did you come up with the agreed upon price for selling? Was there a standard? I don't want to know the amount. Was there some protocol or standard to it?
Warren, I got to tell you, you know this and I know this. Being an entrepreneur and an inventor, there's certain things in life you learn. And I don't know how many times you'll have an inventor come up to you and say, I just got a patent. I know I just won the lottery and I got $1 billion patent here.
I want you to buy it.
you need to buy it. And I'm going like, do me a favor, go do some research and find me the last patent that sold for $1 billion. There's a work that has to go behind that. Yeah. And so what I realized was that when you look at, when you look at where the product, I guess when you understand that the product has to, meet certain levels, you realize there's a value there. Yeah. But you have to separate the baby from the idea. Yeah. And a lot of people think it's still their baby. Yeah. And they want to hang on to it. But when I had several people, GE wasn't the first one to approach me. I've had several companies. And one time I had one company, and I'll tell you, it was over $100 million. They offered to buy me out for $100 million. And this was my early lesson. And I
called them back.
Well, here's what I did. I said, as a young entrepreneur, inventor, I said, well, if it's 100 million to them, it's got to be worth $1 billion to somebody.
Oh.
And so I'm thinking I'm selling it too cheap. You know what I mean? I'm giving these guys something that is very valuable. So I'm selling it too cheap. So as that lesson, as what I learned was when I said, well, 100 million, I think I can get $1 billion for it. I realized that it's very difficult to get a $1 billion. When somebody offered me 100 million, I should have took it then. But the long story short is that my granddaddy told me once, there is a such thing as a pig gets fat and a hog gets slaughtered.
Well, there you go. There's a Yiddish term called hosa.
Yeah.
It means the last piggy that takes the last scrap on the table.
Exactly. And so, I should have took the 100 million because I wouldn't have gone through so much pain as I had to go through. And I would have been a lot younger. But there are things that I learned. And along the way, and I tell inventors this, you need to think about where you want to take your invention, your idea, and productization. But then you want to think about what your strategies are going to be in the future for you and your family. Are you looking to exit? You're going to look to build. Are you looking to build a Microsoft? Are you looking to build a legacy? Or are you looking just to pay the kids college fund and get a nice RV? There's so many ways you have to look at it. And I tell people, always, always, always have your number when somebody offers to buy you. Sit down with your family, your wife, your business partner, whoever it is. Yeah. That's the most important thing you can do. And then one day somebody will come up to you and they'll say, I'll give you 100 million. Don't be like me and be an idiot and say, I'll take $1 billion for it,
Well, I have to say, of all the experiences I've had in my life, which are numerous, no one's ever offered me 100 million for anything. So that must be just in and of itself an amazing experience. And just before, because I want to get into your work with the Native American community and reservations, but just as a Native American growing up, it keeps running through my mind. When you get a company like GE and you said nice things about them, what did they say that made you feel that they were trustworthy? In other words, when someone offers you $100 million, the first thing that goes through my mind is, do they have it? Are they trustworthy? And I don't know if you grew up with the distrust basically of big companies and a lot of people. Anyway, just a thought.
No, you're absolutely right. Because you're right. There are times where you have to trust your instinct, and you look back and you kind of, you look at yourself and you kind of, you're like, well, should I trust this? Should I not? But there's certain, as you go through life and as you go through, there's certain things about being an entrepreneur, being an inventor. You have this inept ability where you start to understand, after you go through so many trials and you have enough scars and residuals from those scars, you start getting a perception of people. But and it's like when I get a phone call. When I got a phone call from GE, it was a very short phone call. They called me up and said, "Hey, we're interested in buying you." And I said, "Listen, I'll tell you this. No, and this is the absolute, very quick." I said, "Look, if you want to buy me," I said, "I'm not in a negotiating mood." I said, "I'll give you my number. This is my number, and we can make this short or long." And the guy was like, "Okay." He said, "Let me get someone else on the phone." He got someone else on the phone. It took a 10-minute conversation.
That's amazing.
And we were done.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, when something's good, right?
Well, no, I come with the idea, when somebody does call you, you got to understand they're looking to buy this product, or they're looking to make money with it as well.
Yeah, sure.
You should bless them. I mean, you should absolutely, thank them for taking you and putting you in a good position. But also, I told them, I hope you make a lot of money with this. I hope you make 10 times what you paid me for this.
Well, it's such a great lesson for people watching today and inventors watching today. I find it so many times. When we're doing licensing agreements, they really don't know what the market value is, and they aren't prepared. And like you said, they wouldn't know a good deal sometimes if it hit them in the head. And sometimes you go out with a great offer and they're like, they want double that. And I find when that happens, credibility is quickly lost, and the deal goes south. I'm always evaluating the person and the product. I'm sure they were too. I'm sure GE was evaluating you in your word as well.
Oh yeah, you're exactly right. It is a mutual trust there on both sides. You have to do that. You kind of give and take. But I think they sense real quick. It's like I remember asking Imwalt. That was the guy's name.
Oh yeah, Jeffrey Immelt.
I remember asking someone there, one of the top guys. I said, "What made you guys? Why did you?" It seemed like it was very quick. And they said, "Well, I'll be honest with you. We saw that you were very determined, and we knew that you'd already sued like 10 companies, and you had quite a war chest built up." So,
in other words, they didn't want to F with you. All right.
Yeah, right. They didn't want to. They knew it could be a long, drug out thing, but they didn't want to go there. And the fact that I was Native American, I think it did have something to do with it, because I can't tell you how many times it's frustrating how many times I have seen not only my culture being taken advantage of, but other cultures being taken advantage of.
No question about it. And we could have a whole separate show on that. But I would love to shift gears because time goes so quickly, and we're having fun with this. But your work with Native Americans and Native American community with reservations. I do, Carmine, have to, David and I have talked about this before. I grew up playing lacrosse and in upstate New York, and I have a lot of Native American friends and lacrosse teammates and stuff, and really always had such great times and such a great camaraderie and all that. So I do have to say I have a bias towards good things happening. But anyway, having said that, I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you're doing, how you're educating others, how you're taking that experience and helping young people with it.
Well, I appreciate that, because one of the things that I don't know how many people are on this call or on this platform today that are natives, but there is, there's over 640 federally recognized tribes in the United States. And if you try to look at how vast that is, it's pretty big, and to cover those tribes and to go into different reservations, it takes a while to do that. And you also have within the United States, you have state recognized tribes. So there are different tiers of tribal reservations in the country. And what I did was one day when I think it was right around the time I met you in DC. I was sitting there at the patent office one day, and David Capos, who was a former US patent director,
Sure. Yep.
he came up and he started talking to me. He said, I understand you're starting a Native American Inventors Association. I said, yes. I said, I'm actually a card carrying Indian from Fond du Lac. And he said, well, I'd like to have a chat with you if I could. And so we started talking, and he was kind of educating me because the PTO had been doing a lot of research on tribes and trying to figure out, what needs to be done to help support, the minority platform as the Native Americans, because they're not finding the stewardship they need to help drive entrepreneurship and inventorship to the tribes. And he asked me, would I be willing to help, from our perspective, and what I was doing with the Inventors Association. I said, yeah, absolutely. So, I started an organization to focus just on the inventor, to help the Native American inventor. And then when I met with Director Capos, after I started the organization, he came up to me, he says, we think that your organization needs to be a little bit broader and a little more encapsulating for the tribes. And I go, what do you mean? He says, well, we think that you should create more of an enterprise platform where you can educate the tribe itself, not the individual inventor, on intellectual property rights, copyrights, trademarks, and those ideas, because a lot of the tribes are struggling with that. And they do. And you got to understand why, because looking at the tribe and also understanding how, you look at how intellectual property and trademark and copyright has been treated in the past, which has been a decimation to the tribe. The tribe never really got caught up or understood how to protect their own cultural identity.
Yeah, right.
Because you go look at how many products that are out there, like Cherokee, cars, Jeeps,
right, brands,
Navajos, clothes, and it goes on and on and on. Right. The cultural names and copyrights, trademarks have been hijacked, and people make money off of them.
Right.
Now you don't see that happen with Coca-Cola, obviously.
No, that's a really interesting. That's really fascinating. You're 100% right. Well, obviously, you've given a lot more thought to it than I have, but that's it all levels and different meanings and interpretations and all types of things with copyrights, right?
It's really is. And when you look at how much it's been misappropriated, the tribes haven't gotten, I hate to say this, no pun intended, but not one red cent, from any of this.
Yeah.
So they really haven't understood how to, encapsulate the value of the tribe. Now, what we did was we came in and we started working with some of the big tribes like the Navajo and Apaches and different tribes and my tribe. And we started working with various tribes and saying, hey, understand the value of intellectual property, understand what it can do to create jobs, understand what it can do to appropriate cultural rights, understand what it can do. So we started working, and actually we worked with a lot of the people at the PTO who really helped engage with our organization and became, and I have to give Director Capos a lot of credit. Even people like John Calvert was very helpful to us. And so we were able to encapsulate the resources we need from the PTO. It helped us a lot to help take that knowledge to the tribes. And
could you go back and by the way, Dave Cav is a great guy. I totally agree. But could you go back, like, could the Cherokee tribe go back now after the fact and get royalties from Jeep? Is that something that's possible, or is it just the cat out of the bag?
You can't. I can go back through the history of what happened, but I'm not pointing fingers because everybody can say every cultural has been downtrodden.
Well, no, but I think it's very legitimate.
Yeah, but it goes way back to right around 1938, right around the Roosevelt era, when they did the American Indian Act. They did one back then. And what they did was they set up money to educate the tribes on intellectual property through the Bureau of Indian Affairs, to educate the tribe and educate them on intellectual property, copyright, trademark. And they set so much money aside to work with the tribes. And then after I hired these interns at William and Mary that came in and helped us to do research on what was actually brought to the tribes to educate them on those cultural rights, we found about $340 was spent actually doing mail outs to the tribes with a flyer explaining about intellectual property. And none of them even, I mean, it was a sad situation. But
well, this is, I mean, I don't want to say it, but are we on camera? This sounds like white America. Over and over and over and over again. But anyway, I mean, I just, it pains me. I'm also an entrepreneur and an individual. I don't work for a big company. I'm not part of a big organization. So I look at these things as an individual, and you look at what's, fair and right. And I will say also that, if you start to think about it, Native American names and tribal names and brand, it sells, right?
A lot. And, even the military uses it. Apache helicopters, Apache.
Yeah.
Apache
I mean, it has a certain connotation. It has, it's funny. It's a weird confluence, I'm sure, for you, but for me also, it's like it has this certain appeal and a real grounded, appreciation for in a lot of ways, which is positive. On the other hand, there's people taking advantage of it. So.
Oh, well, it does. But I think what we were able to do, what NAPEC has done over the last 10 years, and I don't take the credit for it, because I have a lady that works very closely with me. Her name is Ken Ribbons. And she actually is a general manager and runs the operations there. But we're able to go into the tribe, and we've actually helped encapsulate intellectual property now. And we have a motive that we call Buy Back America for the tribe, where we actually go in and try to reacquire intellectual property, bring it into the tribes, and then we try to stimulate job creation from that. And we've done that on a couple of tribes up in the Dakotas and places like that. And we've had a lot of success stories and tribes. But, it all comes down to the inventor. And we've had successful young Native American inventors that's created products. And we've been very happy. We've had some that's made major contributions to the Department of Agriculture. And so, we do have a lot of history and a lot of success that's come from that. And we can see what it's done to benefit, a number of tribes. Unfortunately, we're a small organization.
Yeah.
We're not, we're like you in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I feel your pain, brother.
It's like, how many times can you clone yourself, And
no, it's very difficult, but I would imagine with over 600 tribes and all different sizes, right? That some have the resources or this appeals to, and probably some have no interest at all, right? I mean,
some are very traditional in traditional ways. They look at it in different ways, but some are very progressive and they want to make sure that they get the benefit. So it's just like any other organization or any other companies. Everybody has their own feelings on how they want to treat it. But, I will say this, that, from what we have seen and what we've done in the past, the idea of encapsulating creativity back into the tribes, to the young people, letting them see by ways of connecting to the internet. And a lot of them now have the ability to do that with smartphones and things. Right. That we're seeing sort of a push forward with. We're getting calls, quite a number of calls now every day from tribes, from kids on the reservation that are looking to create their ideas, which is very, very, very empowering for us. We're very excited.
So tell me when let's just say you have an opportunity, or a tribe has an opportunity to take advantage of particular intellectual property. Is it more of a communal effort? I'm not talking about the individual kids that are inventors and might profit themselves, but if a tribe's brand name was used or licensed, or there's money coming in, who does that come into? Does it come into the tribe? Is it shared? I mean, how does that work?
Well, typically, if it comes into an organization that is owned by the tribe, it's brought in through the tribal committees, and then they appropriate the money however it's to be, appropriated.
Right.
and it could be put into the community chest and used to build libraries or build schools or hospitals or things like that. So it is controlled by the tribe and the tribal council, and they control how the money's used. Now, if it's an individual inventor who has basically come to us with an idea or an invention, we tell them we will help them. NAPEC will help the individual who's and by the way, he has to be a tribal member for us. It's one of our mandates. And then what we will do, we will provide them free. I mean, we bring in the legal teams, we bring in the patent resources to help them file their patents. And all this is typically at no cost to the inventor. We have an approval board that has to go through the selection to make sure it's done right. Now, once we file the patents, we try to take it to the next step, which is getting into productivity.
Commercialization.
For us to do all of this and be involved, we tell the inventor that he has to contribute some money back to his reservation, and we let him pick the number that he wants to give back, and it can range anywhere from 10 to 50%. We've had
That's really interesting, because I'm on the National Pro Bono Patent Commission, and we're trying to set up the same sort of program in general. It's a tough one, but the individual tribes, are they coordinated in any way, or do they all operate separately? So
no, you're right. They're all separate. They all have their own mandates. They all have their own different drivers for their communities, different drivers for their economic woes or economic platform they're trying to build. Some tribes are very, very successful. There's quite a few of them out there financially. And one of the things I will say this is that there's a misnomer out there that every tribe is getting rich off the casinos. That is not true. And
it's not.
I mean, if you took the number of tribes that are out there, it's all location.
Sure.
You look in the casinos.
Yeah.
You're probably dealing with less than 50 tribes, out of 640.
Sure.
If you go look on a map, most tribes are so remote and so far out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
There's not much there. So that's why it's very important for us to try to be an outreach to those communities that are out in nowhere land.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that any inventor can create something, even on their kitchen table, and it can help their community or bring value to themselves and other people. So that's
sure. And now when you go out as a representative of NAPAC, and you're from Georgia, and you're from Chippewa, right?
Right.
And so what happens when you go to Oklahoma and you talk to a tribe? I mean, is there any resistance, or are you considered a friend and a family and friend and listening? Or?
Most no. When you look at the tribes, I was an off-res guy. I was educated and everything off-res, but when you go from tribe to tribe and they realize you're really there to help, and you are part of the culture, and they understand that you're there from the heart, you're there to help, then everybody's wanting assistance. Everybody's looking for that. And
that's great. I'm sorry, I'm asking these questions because it's really fascinating to me, this whole process. But what you're doing is, you're liaisoning between cultures, right?
Yeah, it really is. It's like one minute I'm there at the USPTO, you, sitting there dealing with white man's laws, white man's ways, and trying to interpret that, how to best fit it into modern day reservations and native lives.
Yeah, and there's a lot for you to think about, because not only are you trying to do what you think is right, and you've had this experience, but what is right, and what is right. It's not always necessarily right for people to pursue what we're doing,
Well, there's two distinct advantages and disadvantages for a native. I mean, for a native company, even when a tribe actually owns a patent, for an example, and they have to go and they try to commercialize it, and if they ever do have to go into litigation, if the tribe does, to enforce a patent or to go out and try to prop the patent up, make sure it's it's enforceable and they go out and enforce it. Well, there's some advantages for a tribe in that way because they are a sovereign nation, which make it totally different than an individual like you and you and anybody else or me. If I own a patent and I'm not on the reservation, and I go enforce it, of course, all rules apply to us. But to the tribes, it's a little bit different for them.
That's fascinating. Yeah, that's fascinating.
Because they have that sovereignty that kicks in. So there's certain rules that do apply and some don't. So it's an interesting, it's a very, how can I say this? It's a unique platform for them. And they're trying to understand that to this day, what the advantages and disadvantages are.
Well, it's really fascinating. I would love to spend the next hour going down that path, but I'm going to bring that and shift one more time and with part of that, which is the patent system has changed a little bit. You and I know that, we met again in 2012 for the sign of the IA. Remember that? And and I don't know that we were fully aware of all the technical parts of that, but the patent system's changed yet again. And the big tech companies, I don't know if the big GEs are still out there that are going to, maybe if it was 20 years later, they don't call you up, and I know also that you were also a little bit involved, about PTAB, the ability for big companies to, bring individuals back is very difficult. I know you at one time said are very, very, I think you were involved with a very, very clever sort of solution to that, which involved the sovereign nations, right? And maybe you can just talk about how the patent shifted and where you see things heading right now.
Well, it's interesting you say that because you and I both were sitting there when Obama signed the American Invent Act. We were both sitting, in fact, we were sitting next to each other.
That's right. And the kids were screaming and yelling. It was like a rock.
Yeah. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. But you and I, one thing we didn't know, we didn't really do like we should have. We didn't read what was in there.
I don't read stuff about it. I just shake hands and.
Well, I was given a general idea of what was in it, and I said, well, file the first invent, first to file, okay.
Right.
Good.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're going to have a QA system for the for the PTAB, or we're going to set up a QA, the way it was explained to me. Yeah, you're going to have 2 years in, 2 years out. We'll be able to QA the patent.
Right.
Well, somebody changed it at the I guess at the 23rd hour or whatever it was. They come in and said, okay, we're going to make it the life of the patent.
I'm pretty sure it was a white guy.
It could be. I couldn't imagine, it would be a red guy. But,
well, there was some pretty interesting things put into the bill that you and I weren't aware of, and I wasn't, and it had to do with validity and all types of issues that we can't get into today. But it was very clever because I think this is, lobbyists and interests tend to do this. We found out, but anyway,
it was a eye opener after you and I both were there cheering it on, and then we realized, whoa, wait a minute, what happened here? And what happened was they put the 20-year rule in for of course the Patent Trial Appeal Board was put in place, and it to me it was not very well thought out. And I think that it was, they took a shotgun where they should have used a laser.
Yep.
And it had a decimating effect. I still think, and I think that it's not that we can't fix it. I think it can be fixed, and I think it's going to be fixed. It has to be. But it definitely still to this day, until we get that new bill through, it's an issue that everyone needs to address. And I will say this, and you said it just in a few seconds ago. I've stood up and I did speeches to a number of organizations, and I think one of the most eye-opening speeches I did was at Princeton. They had a graduation there for lawyers or something, and I was there just as a guest speaker. And this was right after the PTAB was set up, and right after I'd had two of my patents thrown into a re-exam. Through that system.
Through PTAB.
And I realized it was going to cost me $250,000 to get through each patent, you know. And that was two of them I counted, and I said, okay, that's $500,000 right there, okay, out the door, because I had two thrown in there. And then I asked my lawyers, I said, okay, how much did it cost the company to put me in this? And they said about 50 grand. And I'm going, wait a minute, you're kidding. And they said, no, it's about 50 grand. And I said, so they pay 50 and I got to pay 250.
Right, right, right.
And,
Yes.
it was an eye opener to me. And,
It was a brilliant mechanism for the people that were behind it, clever to put in there. And that's why people are, smart people are always convoluting the deal. You shake hands and guess what? You don't have a deal.
No, you don't.
But it's been very hard. I mean, obviously we have some folks who are out there that are challenging this, and I spent a lot of time, I know you have in Washington, but walking the halls with Josh Malone and the Randy Landeros and those guys. But it's most inventors don't even get it. That's why one of the things I wrote my book about, to try to explain these things to people.
Yeah, it's very important for inventors to understand before they put their kids' college fund into a patent or into an invention.
Yeah,
because a lot of lawyers won't tell you. They'll tell you, this is great, But I've had too many inventors come up to me and say, nobody told me about. I've had them call me and nobody told me about this PTAB thing.
Well, because we all have our self-interest, so everybody does what's, But just as a fascinating, and then we'll open up some questions from Carmen. But the concept of the PCT, the worldwide patent, right? Where you file and then you have a certain amount of time to file in countries around the world.
Right.
In order to does that happen with the sovereign nations as well? That they become a different territory or country to file in.
It does as an entity, as a corporate entity to the tribe. It's the same. It has the same rules as the PCT does. Now I've been to Geneva. I met with the United Nations on one occasion with the USPTO. Wow. And we were discussing DNA rights and those kind of things. And then how's that applicable to the tribes?
Right.
And then, how does the PCT involve sovereignty of the tribes? But that falls within the rule of the treaties of the United States. So it's, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just an inventor. So I don't cross those lines.
Right,
there's only so much my little brain will be able to handle. So,
well, this has been awesome. I know I could go on for quite a long time with Carmine. We probably have some questions, but David, this is fascinating. Thank you. Thanks for taking time out to answer some of these. Some of these questions are a little unusual, probably, but.
Well, actually, we're getting a lot of people from all the social platforms and obviously from YouTube just listening and jumping in and asking some questions. There were several questions that you've already answered with some of the talks, but several people asked how Native American can find out information on invention clubs or more education for them if they are an inventor.
Well, they can go to our website, which is it's the Native American Inventors Association, or they can go to the what we call NAPAC, Native American Intellectual Enterprise Council, and we have different links and different support groups. We even mentioned UIA in that platform as well. And we have they have phone, they can call in. We have someone that'll usually get right back to them within a certain amount of time. So be happy to support them any way we can that way. So
that's great. Awesome. Very good. You had mentioned with your products or products that you were having people infringing on your product, and somebody asked, what were they infringing on?
Well, different things. Primarily, what I built and designed was a way, as I said, ways to extend the internet, and there was a wirelessly, and we created more of a, as I said, there was a list of what works and what doesn't work. And what I found was the list that doesn't work, it actually helped us create a list that did work. And so that's what we filed the patents around. And what we found was that list that we created was the fundamentals of a lot of standards that are created today, such as the 802.11 plus 802.15.4. There's a lot of standards that are based on some of the things that we had already developed, which are the fundamentals on how wireless communication, Wi-Fi and everything connects to to different node devices in order to get the signal through. And so we ended up realizing there was a lot of companies that were using things through the standard bodies, and it's a long story, but we found out that we actually were, how can I say this, pirated by one of the standard bodies. And that's when we realized that there was a lot of people infringing on our products. And we had, and if you go look at SIPCO's website, I think you'll see there's over 400 or 500 companies that are licensed. And it was all from that standard. So,
Wow.
so
That's amazing.
we sued in that time though. We sued people. I actually sued the power company. I sued Florida Power Light. We sued, Johnson, there's so many companies. But we also had we also had a war chest built up, and that allowed us to have that capability. And we already knew, once I went through a couple of depositions and the lawyers heard my story, and then they actually, my story gets kind of into how it kind of filtered into the standards. You could see their eyebrows raise a little bit. Like, this could be interesting if it went to trial. One of the interesting thing was I never went to trial. I did go to a Markman hearing twice, and but it never went to trial. And usually when it got to the Markman hearing, we settled with a lot of companies.
So you never got deposed?
Oh yes.
Hey, one rule of advice when you get deposed: don't say a lot.
I got where I got deposed so many times. I even told the lawyers that was on the opposing counsel, I said, look, I know you're going to bill your hours, so you go right ahead and bill it all you want. I'm going to give you what you need. I mean, that's kind of discussion I had.
You had to fix that deposition rate.
Yeah, I know you're going to bill your client. You go ahead and milk them all you want. I mean, that's the way the game's played.
No matter what you want to say, just say yes, no, maybe.
That's it. You say what you don't want them to hear, and you don't talk when you don't need to talk. That's what I learned.
Wow.
You know, Carmen, I was just thinking, David, your dad must have been pretty damn proud of you, huh?
He unfortunately he passed away right before I hit it, but I know he is. I know he's very proud, and I see it all the time. I'm still native. The other day I was going down my driveway and my wife was sitting there and we were sitting here, we're in our mountain home, and there was a bald eagle that flew over my car and circled it twice. And
wow.
I told my wife, I said, that's my pop right there. I said,
that's very cool.
I said, that's his spirit following me. Because when he passed away, we did a native ceremony for him. And when he passed away, we did this run for the eagle feather.
Yeah.
And someone dropped the feather that day. And we had to go back and try to find it. But the long story, we couldn't find the feather when we buried him. But right when we put the dirt on, there was two eagles come flying over.
Oh, wow.
And that's very powerful for me.
I can imagine. We have a cardinal. We have a cardinal that flies around here. My wife's it's her dad.
Yeah.
But
my dad, he's definitely proud of me. I know he wouldn't have flew over my car the other day.
Well, absolutely. Now, did you grow up on naval bases around the world type of thing, or
more or less? Yeah, and he hit the reservation a few times, but yeah, sure did. My dad was 33 years in the Navy. So
wow, that's
yeah.
Sorry, Carmen, I cut back in there. This is I have so much fun talking to David.
Yeah. Well, you know what's interesting, David, is you touch on so many different lifestyles and so much different information that it is interesting. I'm just sitting here listening and I'm like, wait a minute, I have to get another question.
No, I'm enjoying it, guys. Anything you do to dull a conversation, don't feel bad about calling.
Yeah. Real quick, are there any other products like other Native Americans that you can mention that people would recognize?
There's some out there I can name. The problem is most of them that are out there have confidential agreements.
Yeah,
they can't disclose. We can't disclose it, but I can name some of the tribes that we have deals with that we've worked on with the inventors. And the thing is that we've licensed a lot of those products to agricultural products.
Yeah.
And we've done some, I give you a great example. There's times where I've actually we brought a product into the tribe where this guy created a bulletproof vest, and it's it's better than Kevlar material. This inventor approached me at a show one day and he says, look, I'm trying to get my product out. I've got this idea of invention. So I essentially went and and I talked to him a while, and I had a buddy of mine who's in the tribe up in North Dakota, and I talked to them for a while, and we chatted, and he was with the Mandaree tribe up there, and he's a very, very good friend of mine. His name, he's an awesome business guy. And we were sitting there talking, and one day, and I said, you know what? I said, I got this guy that's got this vest, and next thing you know, I connect them two up, and now the tribe is created, I don't know how many jobs, and they ended up getting sole source contracting to build a bulletproof vest for different law enforcement agency. So they've hired some people now, and so we create jobs doing that way too. Just cross hybrid, and cross pollination for IP. And that's the thing, that brings jobs. And I've always told people, that will help bring the fuel to drive the economy for the tribe in a lot of cases.
Wow.
That's awesome. Well, that's how it's supposed to work. So I know we're getting to the top of the hour now, but
3 minutes left. Got 3 minutes there.
3 minutes. Yeah. I don't know if it's but David, listen, it's been awesome having you on. I can go on for a couple hours. I just have more questions now, but when we go, David's a big motorcycle rider, so I'm coming down, and we're going to ride the Dragon Tail together.
Yep, that'll be great. I told you, come on down anytime. I got my KTM ready for you.
And then we're going to Spain next year. So,
Yep. I'm looking forward to that.
Wow.
Yeah. You got these two old guys on mud, like Warren says. I pull my helmet off. They go, "What?" When they look at me.
Well, I like riding things, David, that your feet touch the ground and doesn't have a brain. I'll leave the horses to you.
There you go. I do ride horses too. I've got a number of horses. So
yeah. Those scare me. Bicycles and horses scare the crap out of me.
No, I got to ride my horse every once in a while. Kick him and go.
Well, it's been awesome. And so, Carmine, I'll let you wrap it up.
Yeah, thank you so much, David. And for all you listeners out there, thank you for tuning in. Go on out to UIA TV on YouTube. Please share our message. This has been a really great show. If you have some other questions, send them on in. We would love to get them either to David or answer them and try to help out as much as possible. If you can get a chance, go ahead and join the UIA. Membership is free, and we got a lot of resources out there for you at UIAUSA.org. We thank you for listening, and